You are listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. Let's get in the mood here. It's Sunday night. It's about 1999. You turn on HBO and you hear this. For 6 seasons and 86 episodes, The Sopranos changed the face of premium TV. It was famous for its character-driven storytelling, but just like any beloved TV show, the sets where the action takes place can be just as important. Consider Dr. Melfi's office, where Tony Soprano is trying to figure out why he would have panic attacks. Or consider the steamy, gritty aura of the Bada Bing Club. All are featured in a new exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image. It's called Stories and Set Designs for the Sopranos. Barbara Miller is the Museum of the Moving Image's Deputy Director of Curatorial Affairs. She organized this exhibit, which is on view now through March 31st, and she's here now to talk about the sets of the Sopranos. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Allison. So good to be with you.
Okay, the Sopranos is, and this is the most overused word, but it actually applies here, it's an iconic television show, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of the exhibit itself, what kind of physical objects are on view?
Yeah, so we had some material, and we have some material in the museum's collection related to the design of the pilot episode of The Sopranos and the first season of The Sopranos. And sort of on the occasion of my colleague, curator of film, Michael Courtesy, organizing a series of evenings showing episodes from season 3 of The Sopranos, we decided, as we do often at Museum of the Moving Image, to kind of look at this sort of iconic work of art from multiple perspectives. So we had these screenings in our theater from last Thursday through Saturday with David Chase and cast members in person, which was incredible, showing these episodes and having these conversations with these avid fans in attendance. But we also, in our galleries, explored the show from a different angle, and that was sort of establishing the series as it went from a pilot, which David Chase wrote, into the first season of the series.
Just generally speaking, outside of The Sopranos, why are sets so important when we think about television and we remember television?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's really different, I think, in some ways for TV than it is for film, right? You make a film, you sort of know what the beginning and the middle and the end is, and you're creating sets, and you sort of know where it's going. You're creating environments for the action to play out over a very sort of limited amount of time. You can see the end coming. For television, and I think especially in the model of The Sopranos, where there was a pilot with no idea what was going to happen after that. Is it going to go for a full season? Is there going to be another season after that? The design of sets for television is a space where characters live for, an unforeseeable amount of time. And I think that's why we focused our attention on this sort of the design of the pilot and the design of the first season, because once those sets were established, that's where the characters had to live for all of those years.
Who are the designers we're talking about?
Yeah, so the production designer for the pilot episode was Edward Pizzoni. And then for the first season, the production designer was Dean Tauscher. And for the balance of the series, Bob Shaw was the production designer, kind of amazing, New York-based production designer. And he, of course, made tremendous contributions to the look and the feel of the series. But the foundational environments were laid by Ed in the pilot, and then by Dean's work as he took those environments that were all location shot, right? Mm-hmm. Except for Dr. Melfi's office. They were all shot on location, had to take those environments, turn them into built sets at Silvercup Studios in Queens. And then that's sort of where the characters lived from, 1999 through 2007.
So what kind of research did the designers do when they were creating the various locations for The Soprano, the pork store, the Soprano home? How important was accuracy?
I think it really needed to have a feel for New Jersey, right? I mean, it was...
Yes, my home state. I used to say The Sopranos is a documentary. As I watched it, I was like, oh, yeah, I went to after that school, I went to that soda shop. I went to that place to get food for my mom. I recognize all the places they picked.
I think it's so great that you say that, because it's not, obviously most of us don't live in the world of organized crime, but these environments is the way that these criminals really move through the world was just this. It was America,
it was
right?
Average America.
It was average America. It was suburban America. And I think, shooting framing the action of organized crime in suburban New Jersey largely, right, was a real change from how mob activity had ever been represented on screen. And I think, David Chase, as a native of New Jersey and of, that neighborhood where Tony and Carmela lived, really wanted to lean into that. And I think that was really important to him, even though after the pilot, all of the built sets were at Silvercup Studios in Queens. All of the exterior shots, all of the exterior shots that were meant to represent New Jersey were shot in New Jersey, without exception.
We're talking about the sets of The Sopranos, the subject of a new exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image, Stories and Set Designs for The Sopranos. It's on view through the 31st.
May 31st.
May 31st. Thank you very much. My guest is Barbara Miller, the museum's Deputy Director of Curatorial Affairs. Dr. Melfi's office, let's talk about that. We've talked about it a couple of different times. It's a place where we see Tony Soprano at his most vulnerable. What are some of the details from that office that maybe you should pay attention to?
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, it's kind of a dream. For me, watching it, it's like a dreamscape. It's not, it kind of doesn't make sense in the context of the show. You sort of see Tony walk in there a few times into this nondescript building through some other courtyard. But inside the room, first of all, it's circular. It's like very sort of free of trappings. It's not kind of loud. It's not a lot of traffic through it. It's not ostentatious. It's just very kind of zen space. And on view in the exhibit, there are a few reference images that the production designer, Ed Pizzoni, kind of pulled in order to create that space. And Ed Pizzoni talked about how he thought about that space was building a circular office. Part of it was wanting to create an environment where Tony had no place to hide. There were no corners to hide in, so he was exposed. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
You had access to David Chase's personal archives for the exhibit. What did you decide to use, and what did you learn?
Oh my gosh. So, like I mentioned, the production design material that's on view in the exhibit is pulled from the museum's collection. But we had the opportunity to go in very generously. David Chase allowed us to go into his personal archive. And I really wanted to limit the exploration to that kind of moment where he was moving from a pilot into planning for the first season. Yeah. How is he taking those characters? How is he expanding upon those stories? Because there were no other scripts written, right? HBO shoots the pilot in 1997. The series gets greenlit 6 months later, and all of a sudden, okay, we have to figure out who these people are, what they're going to be doing, what are these stories going to be about. And the material in David Chase's archive really speaks to some of the research that they did, much more fine-grained research into the mob, sort of looking for themes that they could then bring into the stories. So there are handwritten notes that chart character development and story arcs and figuring out kind of what the main focus is going to be for each episode. But I think really tellingly, one of the strengths of The Sopranos and one of the reasons people love it so much and it has, stood the test of time, it's not like, every episode has a little button at the end. Okay, this
right.
is done. Now moving on to something else. It really is about how these characters evolve. So the notes that we have on view are really looking at characters. They're not just looking at sort of story beats necessarily and resolving something at the end of an episode. So that was really great. Yeah.
One of the places that people will recognize who watch the show the entire season is the pork store. Mm-hmm. It's not what we think of as Satriale's pork store in the pilot, right?
In the pilot, it was shot at a real business called Santani's, right?
Yeah.
It's a meat market. So they sort of took over the market for the time it took them to shoot the pilot. And then when they were moving into a series, they couldn't realistically use a real business to keep shooting at day to day. So they had to scout multiple locations sort of in the area to see what they might use as an ongoing set. So they actually they built a set to look like Santani. So there was continuity. Obviously, the name changed because they couldn't use that name. But there is a lot of continuity in terms of the look between Santani's and the set that they built nearby that became Satriale's.
I want to talk about the Sopranos' home. There are many key scenes that take place there. And I see in the show there's a floor plan of their house.
Yeah.
Why was that necessary? And for, I guess, the writers to understand how this family lived?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was important maybe for the writers to see how all the spaces connected. When they shot the pilot, they shot within this family's private home, right? They shot the outside with the pool and the ducks and all that. And they also used the inside of the house as a set. And I think having those plans there was important maybe for the writers to understand, the spaces they could use, but really also to plan, how it was shot, right? For the director of cinematography and all the folks that were working on it. After the pilot, they continued to use the exteriors of the Recchia family home in Caldwell, ongoing really through all of the series, but they built a dedicated set for the interiors at Silvercup, and they modified the layout of the house somewhat so that it was easier for them to use. They kind of added a main stairway. That entryway in the actual home is single story, but they, for different sort of story reasons and creative reasons, they modified the house somewhat to be able to add continuity there. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing in the exhibit? I know that's a hard question, but one that you just like to tell people about.
Oh gosh, it's really tough. I mean, having those handwritten notes from David Chase and his writing team, and really seeing the DNA of the show come together. I mean, that's for us. That's really the magic, right? At the museum, we like to kind of pull the curtain back to show how things happen. It feels like magic, but it's work, right? We show the work that's important for us. So seeing that work take place, seeing David Chase's sort of ideas and the contributions of his writers as the outlines for the different episodes come together. That's really, really magical. I think also just having the production binder there from the pilot episode, that feels kind of magical. They didn't really know, you realize they had no idea what was coming.
They had no idea.
They had no idea what was coming, and they're out there. They're doing the thing, right? They're producing a pilot, and all these years later, it sort of becomes this iconic thing.
The name of the exhibit is Stories and Set Designs for the Sopranos. It's on view through May 31st. My guest is Barbara Miller, the museum's Deputy Director of Curatorial Affairs. It's on exhibit at the Museum of the Moving Image. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Elsa. It's a pleasure.